had a profound stutter, was a liar, and worst of all, he was a murderer. And yet God chose him to lead 2 million people in the greatest exodus of all time. KBC Dramatics presents God's Hero.
Some say that I was born lucky, but I have come to realize that if you have got God on your side, you are most likely going to be more lucky than most. I was adopted by royalty, yet cared for in my early years by my natural mother. At first, I never perceived it, but as I grew older, I had a growing perception that had God marked me to become one of the most important cogs in his wheel of life. Now I, a young, healthy, bouncy boy, was born in the province of Goshen, Egypt. Although I honestly believe my mother was wishing that I was a girl. Why do you ask? Well, you see, the ruling Pharaoh at the time saw the Jews in his land as, well, growing too fast and a threat to his country. We had been in Egypt for 400 years, since the days of Joseph, and had grown from less than 100 to well over 1.5 million. Pharaoh, Thutmose, decided it was time to, well, cull the Israelites by doing away with all baby boys. He even sent his soldiers into Goshen to kill all newly born males. It was just then when I entered the world, so my mother knew she had to do something fast. First, she put together a basket made with reeds. Then she covered it with a pitch to make it waterproof. And finally, she covered the inside with soft leaves and grass. Apparently, I was fast asleep when lain gently into the basket, which was then placed into the Nile in the middle of a large assembly of reeds. She had purposefully selected this particular spot because every day the Pharaoh's young daughter would come to that exact place to cool down from the hot palace, well, by having a cool swim. It wasn't long before I woke up and, being a little peckish, let out a loud wail, which was heard by the princess, who immediately came to investigate. When she peered into the basket, she was so struck by my big eyes and cute dimples that she just had to pick me up and give me a hug. She turned to the servants and said she wished she had a baby just like this one. Now, this is where my sister comes in. She had, at the instructions of our mother, been hiding near the reeds and seen everything. She quickly came forward and, bowing low,
Your Majesty, I know a woman who has just lost a baby and would love to be the nanny for the child in your Majesty's arms. May I suggest your Majesty adopt the little fellow and this woman nurse him?
Bethia, Pharaoh's daughter, thought this was a brilliant idea, and I duly entered the Egyptian royalty. Yet, for the first 8 years, I was looked after, fed, and dressed by my real mother. At the same time, I was educated in reading, writing, and arithmetic. I was also taught how to use a sword and spear. This meant that before I was 15, I was able to kill a man faster than anyone could blink. My father, the newly crowned Pharaoh of all Egypt, was very proud of me and often came to watch sword fighting competitions, which I usually won. Despite living in the palace and basically having anything I wanted, deep down I was very unhappy. I, I hated the way the overseers were treating the Jews, who were nothing more than slaves. It was the day before she left when my nanny told me the truth about my birth and adoption. Although, even before this, when she used to tell me stories about Abraham and the adventures of Joseph, I used to feel a fire in my soul, a fire of pride and immense honor. For my 18th birthday, my father, Pharaoh, gave me Atan. Oh, the most beautiful Arabian stallion I have ever seen. He was pure white, with a mane that, when he whipped his head back, seemed to cascade in all directions. I loved Atten to bits, and no one except me was allowed to touch him. Many people would have, well, done anything to have the life I was enjoying in the palace. I had a servant who would wake me up in the morning with a fresh fruit juice, including pineapple. I had a servant who would ensure that my bath water was the exact temperature. Then there was my dryer, and finally my dresser. I never lifted a finger for anything. But I felt deep in my soul that I longed to know more about Yahweh, the one and only God. I felt a deep sorrow for the Israelites, a people that were abused day and night. I regularly used to ride Aton into the area where Pharaoh was building his tomb. He was determined to ensure that his pyramid was going to be bigger and grander than any of the others. My heart bled for the Israelites as they worked from sunrise to sunset, screamed at, beaten, and whipped. One morning, I came around the corner of the pyramid under construction when I saw an Egyptian overseer booting and hitting an Israelite as he lay on the ground begging for mercy. I felt for the Jew as I dismounted from Atan. Stop! Stop! You were killing him! He looked at me as if I was something that had crawled out from a stinking dirt bin.
So what? He's a Jew. Now push off. I have been placed in charge of sections 2 and 3 of the Jewish workers by Pharaoh himself and told to get them to work, no matter how.
With a cruel smirk, he moved to smash his foot into the weak Israeli's unprotected side. But he never had the chance, because he was dead before his boot could reach its intended target. For a number of years, I had been receiving military training with the King's Guard and taught, among other things, how to kill instantly. With one movement, I had stabbed the overseer between his second and third ribs, directly into his heart. He was dead before he hit the ground. The man that I defended did not even say thank you. He just staggered to his feet and hobbled off to the other side of the pyramid. I looked around. No one had seen what had happened, so I quickly dragged the body over to a nearby mound of desert sand, dug a shallow grave, and covered him as best I could. For the next few days, I stayed in the palace, terrified, expecting any moment to be arrested because I'd killed an overseer. I would most probably have been flayed alive. In other words, hot water poured over me and my skin slowly peeled off every part of my body. Oh, an horrific way to die. I saw or heard nothing, so I relaxed. and believed firmly I'd got away with, well, a justified murder. Or so I thought. A couple of days later, as I was riding through the construction area, I saw two Israeli men fighting. I quickly pulled them apart and sternly reprimanded them. Why? Why are you hitting another Jew? You must look after each other. The man, who was clearly winning the fight, turned to me.
Who made you judge over us? Hey, are you going to do to us what you did to that overseer?
My blood suddenly ran cold. If they knew, then soon everyone in Egypt would know what I had done. I immediately went back to the palace, grabbed what I could, and headed with my only true friend, Atan, my Arabian stallion, for the hills. Well, it was Midian to be exact. I learned later that Pharaoh was flaming mad when he found out about what I had done to the overseer, and said that I must be brought to him dead or alive. After traveling day and night for 3 days, I reached a large well in a very arid region. I was awakened very early one morning, on the day after I'd arrived, by a commotion at the well. A number of young ladies were being harassed by a few rough men who chased their sheep away, saying that their animals had more right to the water. By the time I got to the pit from where I'd been sleeping, the shepherds, who had seen me coming with my drawn sword, made a hasty getaway. Unfortunately, most of the now very upset girls' sheep had wandered everywhere. With the aid of my horse, I quickly rounded up their rams plus ewes, and being macho, well, they were quite beautiful. I even drew water for them all. I heard later that when they got home, all they could do was talk about this debonair man who had gathered their chased away sheep and even drawn water for their animals. I was just packing up to resume my journey when a servant came running up to me and said that I must go with him to meet the father of these young ladies I had just helped, because he wanted to thank me personally. At first, I was not all that keen, because, well, I'm not really a people's person. Besides, then I had a slight stutter and always felt awkward among people. Even when I helped them, they often did not seem to appreciate it. You know, I could never imagine myself becoming the leader of a nation that numbered nearly 1 million people. When I met Jethro, the girl's father, I was impressed at the wealth he had accumulated for himself. His daughters were all over me, each trying to impress me more. After my feet were washed, my hair brushed and cut, and new clothes given to wear, I felt a new man. I'd never even been treated like this when I was in Pharaoh's palace. The 7 daughters of Jethro were either very hospitable or desperately looking for a husband. Well, I didn't mind. I'd ridden long and hard for many days, and this was paradise. I never told Jethro about my dicey exploits in Egypt. I just said that I'd come from the land of the pyramids and was looking for a new start.
Do you know what? You have come to the right place. I have been for years looking for a brave young man to take care of my flock. I was hoping for a son, but what does my wife give me? Not one, not two, but 7 daughters. Tell you what, Moses. Can I call you Moses?
I nodded, trepidation creeping into my face. not knowing quite what might come next.
Now, young man, because of what you have done for my daughters, I will give you one of them to marry. Anyone, although not Medina. She's only 12. I will also give you the cottage near the main house to live in and pay you well. Now, all you have to do is take full charge of my sheep. What do you say?
Wife? Job? Security? Oh, sounds too good to be true. I nodded. He smiled. For more years than I can remember, a Jewish prince from Egypt spent most of his time looking after a few hundred sheep in Midian. Married to Zipporah, who besides being beautiful, could cook like a professional chef. Oh, I thought this was my life complete. What a mistake. This was only the beginning from what God wanted me for.
To be continued.